Hey everyone, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. Today we are going to be doing two things in preparation for the Mun base. The main thing is we're going to be transferring the station out to the Mun, but I also want to launch the crew and their escape pod vehicle. Now it's only going to be a three-man crew, and I've actually downloaded something that I'm pretty excited to actually try out for this, which is the Clever Bobcat Industries Soyuz rocket. It's pretty good. It's very accurate. I really enjoy this thing. He has a whole Soviet pack. Right now I'm just using this thing, right, pretty much. But, yeah, pretty much it's very cool. I added a mech jeb to it. This is going to be the escape pod for the Mun base. So if anything goes awry, they'll be able to get away from the space station. And I don't really know if it can make it back to Kerbin or not. The service module does have its own fuel source, so I would assume they probably can. But we're going to go ahead and just launch this bad boy up into... why do I keep clicking on the wrong things here? Launch it up to a 100-kilometer orbit. That seems fine. Let's engage the autopilot. And yeah, these ships are excellent. I am very impressed. It's very faithful. And they're actually pretty functional, too. I've always really liked the Soyuz program. The Soviet Union has always been... and, you know, Russia today, they've always been very advanced in the space race. They beat America to almost every milestone, except for landing a man on the moon. But they've been very advanced. I like their designs. This thing has been in use for, like, what, 40 years, 50 years now, the Soyuz rocket. It was originally intended to be used for a Soviet moonshot, but that never ended up happening, so the program, you know, it's still functional. It's one of the most, I guess it's the most used rocket in the world. And Bobcat Industries has done a fantastic job modeling this thing. And it even has a pretty cool IVA. Well, we have a second. It's pretty accurate to what it actually looks like inside with the terrified Russian cosmonauts and American astronauts, I guess. But yeah, I'm very impressed with this thing. I'm going to show the whole launch because it's a new launch vehicle, and I always like new launch vehicles. We're also going to be launching some of these like little Soviet clipper things to replace the Dragon Rider pod. Look at that. To replace the Dragon Rider pod on the space station around Kerbin, because I want to actually replace that pod. I don't really like it that much, but that'll be something we do in the future. So this thing should easily be able to make orbit, because in real life these things can easily make orbit. I think it's been scaled down from the actual rocket to be more Kerbal sized, but I'm not sure. But it definitely does function pretty darn well. I like the stage. It's nice and quiet. It's kind of relaxing. So is this thing going to separate the escape tower? Is that going to separate on its own here? I don't really know. It's wiggling really bad. We do have some pretty bad wiggling kind of starting. This is actually my first flight all the way to orbit with this thing. I tested it a couple of times, but I did not actually go into orbit with it, so not real sure how this is going to work out. It's a descent module. We can get rid of the payload. Is that hooked up to any of these? Yeah, it is. It should decouple in a minute here. So there should be a lot going on here in a second. I don't like how wobbly that is. Okay, fuel is pretty much on fumes. And there we go. And we should have some shroudage separating and stuff in a second here. Unless the game doesn't realize that it needs to. Are we on a trajectory for orbit here? Nope. We are definitely not. Let's separate some more crap, I guess. I had to do that myself. As far as this goes, let's decouple that node. That's just going to kind of sit there, I guess, until we do some sort of maneuver, because it's kind of getting pushed by the rocket. We don't need the escape tower anymore. Is there more shroud here? There sure is. There sure as heck is. You want to get off my rocket here, payload shroud? There we go. I think MechJeb might have separated all that stuff on its own, but I'm not real sure, so I'll just do it myself. Now, I'm going to refuel the actual service module part of this once we get out to the Mun, or probably even before, I'm not real sure. Let's go at, well, we have to wait for the time warp. I want to get these solar panels out in a minute, although it has a huge electrical charge. That's ridiculous. Probably more realistic to what a ship would actually have. Look at that thing. I am enjoying that. It's a little dark to get a good screenshot here, though, unfortunately. Alrighty, so are we in orbit? We are in orbit. So I'm going to go ahead and handle the rendezvous with the service tug thingy, and I will meet you guys once we get down there. Alright, well, we are closing in, and wouldn't you know it, it happens to be the dark side of the planet. But at least there's a good number of lights on this thing. I've actually sort of changed my plans here just a little bit, in that we are actually not going to be bringing this thing all the way out with us, because I've decided that it's kind of too heavy and it's going to throw off the balance of the tugboat. So what we are going to do instead is we are going to just dock and top off the fuel tank, because I'm curious as to whether or not it can even make it to the Mun. If it can make it from Kerbin to the Mun, it can make it from the Mun to Kerbin. So it will kind of be a good way to know what the range on this Soyuz is anyway. So we're just going to dock real quick here, top off the tanks, and head out to the Mun with this thing. And these guys can just wait in orbit for the rest of the station to arrive, and we'll rendezvous everything together then. Because this thing's fairly heavy, and I am concerned that it would screw everything up. As far as actually, I'm a little concerned about that tugboat actually too. I might dock. Well, it's going to be out of balance either way. I might dock it on the front port of the tug, because the more balanced this is, the better it will work out for everyone. Alright, so we're coming into dock here. I believe these docking ports are compatible. I know that this Soyuz one is compatible with the standard vanilla docking port, so it should be compatible. Yeah, it is compatible. Okay. Alrighty, so I'm going to steal some of the fuel from here, so that's the wrong section. So that this thing's ready to go as far as it can go, and hopefully we can make it to the Mun with it. If not, well, I'm sorry guys, you're going to be lost in space probably. Let's transfer some electric charge. That transfer is really slow. That transfer is very slow. But we have a full fuel tank. How much RCS fuel did I actually utilize and all that? We have a lot of that left, so we're good to go. Let's undock. That was a strange undocking noise, but I think everything's okay. Let's get away from the station. So we can get our, and it's, what do you know, it's daylight now. We can get our maneuver plan now. Let's turn off the RCS because we really don't need it right now. There's that mysterious debris down on the planet again. I'm going to just turn this, the solar panels are exposed to the sun because these ones do not track the sun. And I would like to get that charge up and leave it up. So while we're doing that, let's go ahead and clear that. And we're going to do a rendezvous. This is pretty much the way that I always do these things now. Is this going to settle down at some point? Let's do the time warp. This is pretty much the way I always handle these things now. Which is I create the basic maneuver node using the intercept feature, the rendezvous feature of MechJeb, which gets us close, but MechJeb has the peculiar habit of wanting to actually crash you into whatever your target is. Because, you know, with a ship, it's fine, it's going to get you close, but it gets you a little too close with a planet or a moon or whatever. So we're going to just go ahead and get this out to around 100,000, and we'll finesse it further once we get down there. So now we can go ahead and just have this engage the node, get rid of the rendezvous planner, and we should be on our way, hopefully, to the Mun, assuming this thing has enough fuel. It's a decent amount of fuel. It really just depends on how much fuel the engines use. It looks like it's more than enough fuel, but I really have no idea how much the engines use. Well, there it goes drifting away. We'll see you again at the Mun, Mr. Station. This is taking a minute. Fingers are definitely crossed on this. This is uncharted territory. We already have some components for the new space station out at the Mun. I didn't record that because I was like, I have to launch 4 identical fuel tanks out there. So I'm only going to show one of those. Sorry, I had a little technical hiccup there, but we are burning. It's actually a pretty short burn. I guess it's a light ship, and those are fairly powerful engines. This thing's going to have no problem getting, well, maybe some problem getting them on. Might end up being on the no, I think it'll probably even be able to get into orbit. We do have another stage that we can use if we have to as well. So that's not a huge deal if we end up having to use another stage. The fuel's looking not too shabby though, because we're more than halfway done with this burn. And we're well over half fuel remaining. We're not even there yet. I think we're going to be around a third of our fuel tank. Probably a little more than that remaining by the time this is done. Yeah, I think this thing's going to make it to the Mun just fine. Cool beans, man. Well, it's going to make it to the Mun. Whether or not it gets into orbit is another matter now. But it looks, I mean, that's a lot of fuel left still. It should be able to do it. So now there's really nothing to do but time warp out there. Kind of good to get away from all these satellites. I don't know if they're causing lag or not. They seem to be. Alrighty, let's see what we got here. What did our... That ended up being a little more... for whatever reason, it ends up being a little more than you bargained for. For some reason. I could do a course correction, but I think we're just going to be happy to get into any orbit. If I have to send fuel, I have to send fuel. So let's get a maneuver planned to circularize the orbit at the next periapsis. Let's create the node. And let's execute that node. So these guys don't get flung to who knows where. For some reason, I've been having this problem where you have to double execute. I don't really know what the deal with that is. Maybe it was still in time warp. I don't know. But this is looking like it's going to work out, isn't it? Let's get a... I need a screenshot of the Soyuz. I do like screenshots. I have so many screenshots I've taken this game. For being such a simple graphic style, I do find it very pretty. Yeah, it's only a 12-second burn out here. Look at that, too. That's a pretty little shot there. Oh, we missed the little light burst. Oh, well. Like I said, this is a pretty short little burn. This actually works really well. This could probably get wherever I want to go around these parts. Alright, so if I choose to, we can lower the orbit later. We still have a good amount of fuel to do maneuvers around the Mun. So these guys are just going to kind of chill here. I do want to orient this in an up and down direction because, like I said, these solar panels are not able to rotate. And although I have no real way of knowing like where the sun is going to be at any particular time, we should still be able to get a little bit of power out of these panels really at any time, and that should keep the pod alive. It's not going to be too long before we come down and deal with this stuff, but I just want to make sure that they don't get lost in space. So we're going back to the Space Center because we have to go back to the Tracking Center now and get back to this. So these are modules that you'll see later. We're gonna launch another one of those in the next episode. They're just fuel tanks, pretty much. I built little ships that carry the fuel tanks. They actually kind of look like the Daedalus class starships from Star Trek, which I was excited about. So, I mean, that's like out on a lever, which means it's going to be less balanced than it would be if it was over here. I don't have another docking port to put it on, and I think that this one will probably keep it most in line with its center of mass. So we're going to go ahead and open this shield and move this down there. I do want to bring this out this time. Alright, this thing docks. I'm actually going to come back here for a second because I just undocked it. This thing docks so fast, it's ridiculous. I'm going to twist it so it's roughly lined up. I really don't care how lined up it is, but try to keep it somewhat on center here. And we don't need these solar panels out getting damaged, so let's just go ahead and pack those up right now. I just really like how well this little ship maneuvers. I wish all ships maneuvered this well. It works really well with the RCS balancer on too, because it keeps the RCS fuel from being wasted too much. It looks like it's twisted just a tad. I don't really, like I said, I don't really care, but I don't really have anything else to do. I'm going to turn out the lights because I don't want to be blinded. Alright, docking is done. Now, like I said, this is going to be a little bit unbalanced, but I hope it will be fine. There's really no way to know. I do know that I want to put on the smart translation here. And let's get our MUN transfer done here. There's enough crap that it's actually kind of hard to select what I want. I think I can actually just click on the orbit and do that, and it's fine. We're going to do the same exact thing with the rendezvous planner here. Intercept with the transfer, and then make our adjustments. And it seems like it always kind of bumps my orbit just a little bit. I don't really care that much what this orbit ends up being, because we're going to have to change it anyway. I want to be in a fairly low orbit, but I don't want to do that utilizing this. It always seems to be a little inaccurate. So that looks pretty good. We have our maneuver planned. Let's go ahead and execute. How much time do we have here? 12 minutes. That's not too bad. Now, this thing's wobbling a little bit, but it doesn't look too bad. Of course, it's not wobbling now because we're in time acceleration. The real test is going to be to see if the gimbaling can keep this thing in line. Now, the station and the tug both weigh a lot more than this little tiny worker drone, so I'm hoping they're not going to have any trouble keeping us online, but I guess we'll see. This does not seem like it's accurate how long this burn is going to be here. Oh crap, I don't have any engines activated. Hold on a second. We need to actually redo this, so let's remove the node. I deactivate these engines, and unfortunately they're not in any sort of action group because I neglected to do that. So we have to redo this. That was almost bad. I guess it wouldn't have mattered because it just wasn't going to go anywhere, but let's get that replotted here. Let's see, transfer. I guess we're going to have to warp around the planet again, but that's alright. Wow, that is way more than I wanted to be. Get out of here. So finicky. $200. Closer we get to our final orbit, the happier I am, because it's more economical to do this out here. Let's call that good. Execute the node. We'll see what happens here. Engine should be good to go. Look at that thing spin around, though. Doesn't have any trouble spinning around. Alright, well, it's looking like it's staying fairly well on course there. Our engines are all firing out, but it's a good thing heat doesn't really matter because we'd probably be cooking a lot of stuff right now if it did. It doesn't really matter, but these shields being open bugs me for some reason. I actually made a newer version of this that I didn't launch. I've edited this since then that does not have this style of docking port and stuff on it. Next one we launch out to Minmus will be, it's going to be a fairly identical station, but it's going to have some revisions to it as well, this on this core section. So it doesn't look like too bad of a burn. Looks like it's going nice, so I'm going to call this good, and I will meet you out at the MUN. I did want to mention a design flaw that I've noticed here, which is that these center fuel tanks don't have any fuel lines running to them. I thought I did that, but apparently I did not. Which means that I have to manually refill these tanks as we go, and I have to try to keep it kind of balanced. I don't think we're obviously not going to have to do that for this trip, so I'll be able to just refill them all, but that's kind of annoying. I might have to launch a new version of this off camera that has that design thing fixed, but this has not thrown the balance off too much at all. I think I did a pretty good job of keeping that going there, because I think it actually helps that it's in the same orientation as these things too. Alright, well, our transfer burn has been completed with what would seem to be fuel to spare. So I'm going to go ahead and take a moment after this is done here, while we're on route here. Let's go ahead and turn that on just so it's stabilized. Well, it's going to wobble a lot. Let's just do a time warp. I'm going to transfer some fuel and whatnot, and I think we'll go ahead and plan our maneuver in a minute here. Alright, so we're looking at what ended up coming of this was a 79. I don't know why that's wiggling around like that so much, actually. Let's see if we can change our closest approach. Can we do this? Let's see what happens. That seemed to make things much, much worse. No, do not execute. Remove the node. Jeez. Let's see here. I mean, I could just set up my own maneuver node, I suppose. Let's just add one like here. Probably need to do a little braking, possibly. No, that made it worse. So I need to burn a little bit towards it. Not sure how much I can really change this, to be honest. So that's much worse. Well, let's just fix it when we actually get in the sphere of influence, and we'll just do the maneuvers that way. I know it's more efficient to make the changes out here, but it's kind of wiggling around and stuff, and I don't like it. So let's just get transferred over here. I actually do want the maneuver planner out still. Alright, so now we have a better idea of what we're actually doing here. So let's change our periapsis. Let's see if it will do this. 50? Will that do something? Yeah. Let's execute that. Why are we getting such a big lag spike here? I don't know. I don't know at all. And then we can circularize our orbit at our next periapsis, create node, and execute node. And that should put us in a pretty darn close. It's not perfect. I can adjust the station's orbit the rest of the way myself once we get there. I just want it to be close. But this will be pretty good for our orbit. I'm even thinking about going a little bit lower because there's no atmosphere here, so we can orbit as long as we don't crash into a mountain. I want to leave enough room to maneuver either below or above with rendezvous and stuff. So I think 50 is kind of a good compromise. Like 30 might be more fuel efficient, but I would have a harder time catching up with stuff, I guess, is what I'm thinking. I don't know. I don't know. Have to give that some thought. Let's wait for this burn. Alright, so the Mun station is going to be in orbit here in a second. I'm very excited. Come on, swing around. Alright, so it's at least not going to escape now, and alright, I'm pretty excited, man. Start landing some base modules and stuff once we get this done and get some of that Kethane going. We can really get some further exploring going then. That last little bit is the hardest bit. Getting down those last few meters. So you see here, these are that's a Soyuz that we launched, but these are the the other components that have already been launched as well. So I think I'm probably gonna, in this episode, we're gonna launch one more component, which would be one of these, and then I will rendezvous everything in the next episode. Actually get this thing set up. Let's go ahead and close out of that. What orbit did we end up with? 51, 51. That's pretty close. So I believe I'm going to cheat here, and we're going to go point this thing this way, just because this is a lot easier than manually doing it. Smart ASS is one of my favorite features. Alright, cool. Let's get those solar panels unfurled. Why are you wiggling so bad? SAS isn't even on. Let's turn that off, because I think that actually might count as SAS. Alrighty, we're good to go. We got some power generating. Let's rotate so these get into the sun fully. Alright, Mun Station is operational. And a lot more parts need to be added, but it is here. So let's head back to the Space Center now that that's done, and we can see what the next module is going to launch. I actually really like how this ship works. I actually sort of want to design this and make it into kind of a permanent ship that I would use, because I think it's... I always liked... Well, it's not exactly like the Daedalus, but there's a ship in Star Trek, not expanded universe, but whatever you call that, like fiction, called the Daedalus class starship. It was supposedly like one of the first Federation starships. It's got a big spherical thing. Now, obviously, it only has 2 warp nacelles. This has 3 engine nacelles, because it needs to be balanced in that way. And, you know, the 2 nacelles at the top don't work very well in this game, because you'll just end up spinning around. These are not warp engines. So, I've already launched 3 identical ships. They're all the same. These are going to actually dock directly with the space station and then eject this without actually undocking. It's just using a what's it called? A decoupler. So that all looks pretty good to me, except we want it to only go to stage 1, I think. Is this, which one's stage 1? That's stage 1. Okay. Let's go! Now, the reason that I launched these off-screen at first was because this is actually pretty heavy. This is a spherical fuel tank that holds about the same amount of fuel, just a little bit less than one of these orange tanks. Now, it is smaller, and that seems a little bit unbalanced to me, but I guess you can just logically say, you know, the volume of sphere is more efficient, and they probably have little spherical things inside of here to contain all the fuel anyway. So I guess that's maybe what they're thinking with this tank. I don't know. It's a cool tank nonetheless. I already know this rocket works because it's basically just my normal launcher with a big old heavy thing on the top. It does actually function, although it's a little bit of a struggle to get this much fuel up. Yeah, I think this thing looks really cool flying, especially once it gets rid of this big orange tank here, but it won't do that till we're kind of en route. I might as well talk about this. I had to actually like put one of these smaller tanks in here so that it would actually fit in here too. But and then I had to actually add Separatrons to here. You'll see that when it separates, so it pushes it away in a reasonable fashion. Because the first one that I launched, I was a little worried about how this came out at a funny angle and almost crashed into the engines and stuff. So I made that modification so that it would actually separate a little more cleanly. So I'm gonna go ahead and get our orbit plotted, and I'll meet you at the transfer burn. Look at that bouncing like that. That's a little worrying, but I know it works because we've done this before and it's been fine. So you can see here we're kind of burning through the fuel, almost done with that orange tank. This is always the worrying part. It takes a really shallow approach to getting in orbit, and it's really not gaining a lot of speed. If we look here at the orbit info, I think it's, from what I noticed before, when it hits about 2,000, or 2 kilometers, let's say, when it hits 2 kilometers per second, that's really when the orbit gets established, because we're at orbital speeds pretty much then. The first one of these that I launched like this, I was very concerned, but you see it's picking up the pace a lot more now. And by the time we hit 2 kilometers per second, it will really be moving in. We'll get into orbit. So it's a little bit dicey. Like, launching huge amounts of fuel and heavy things is always a little bit dicey. That's why I go for this lower orbit, because it's a little bit easier to establish, and then we can just transfer right out of it. Alright, so we are transferring. Fortunately, it's daylight for once, too. Now, this burn time is going to get completely screwed up, because midway, well, not even midway, but partway through this burn, we're going to have our separation occur here. There's other debris that's out here somewhere on crazy orbits. So a little bit more correction than usual is going to be required when we actually reach the Mun for this. Just due to this, but it doesn't really matter. And we're going to be separating any second now. There we go. Fuel's pretty much gone. There we go. Bam. So yeah, nice separation. Then we fire the rockets. Nothing blows up. Everybody's happy. Probably turn off the RCS at this point. It should be able to stay on course with the vectoring engines. Try to not waste all that. It's a little bit more maneuverable now that it's just down to this, but there's our target. Looking all sinister, being all blacked out there. We're passing by some sort of debris. I don't know what that's from. Space is starting to get a little crowded out here. Like, that tank is just going to be out here forever. It's very likely that some of this could be from a previous launch of one of these things. But they're pretty far away. Nothing to worry about. Doesn't seem like it's going to even tell me what they are either, is it? They are debris, because it's just showing up in that kind of dull gray color. Alright, so we have all the other ones in 100,000 kilometer orbit, so I kind of want to do that for this as well. Let's see if we can get this to work. That's 10. I don't want 10. I want 100. So what sort of burn is this going to be? Should probably do it a little more than 30 seconds from now, though. Let's do it like 60 seconds so this thing actually has time to move, because it's kind of bulky. And we'll execute that. And it's doing that again, isn't it? Let's give it RCS power to try to get this going here, because we're past time again. Remove the node. Create the node. Execute the node. Come on. Get flipped over, man. So yeah, I just want to kind of nudge it into the final orbit that, well, it's not a final orbit, but the final parking orbit that I want to be in. And then we can get everything docked up. Which is going to be a lengthy process. Unfortunately, I forgot to transfer the RCS fuel out of this one before I did this. There's actually an extra RCS tank that's on that tank that I left behind, which is too bad, because we're kind of tearing through the RCS fuel right now. And that's going to make docking a lot harder. I would really rather not have to refuel these things. But it might come to that. It's never going to hit that mark, is it? How close is this going to be, even though it overshot on time? You know what, that's good enough. So let's just get this thing. Where is circularize? There we go. At the periapsis, create node, and go. I'm not going to use any RCS for this part because it has tons of time to get the maneuver done. But I'm pretty much just going to end it here because you get the idea. We're just going to get this thing into its final orbit. That's pretty. And then next time we're going to start assembling stuff. I have another major module left to go on the station. I think it's only going to be one, but it's kind of huge and heavy. So I'm a little bit worried about getting it out here. And I do want to replace that tug because of the design flaw that I built into it. It was design oversight, really. But yeah, guys, I want to thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.